The wind, a relentless force of nature, howled and whistled with an almost mournful cadence as the small boat sliced through the tumultuous, ink-black waters, its hull creaking and groaning in protest. It was a tempestuous journey towards the remote and foreboding lighthouse that stood sentinel on the desolate and jagged shores of Blackstone Island, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of the unknown. The invitation that had beckoned me here was not a mere scrap of paper, but a portal into a realm of intrigue and trepidation that had long intrigued my imagination. The missive had arrived unexpectedly, carried by a weathered messenger who seemed almost spectral in appearance, his eyes reflecting a knowledge that spanned realms beyond human understanding. The sender's name, Dr. Samuel Holt, was etched in my memory from our shared days of academic pursuit and intellectual discourse. He had been a solitary figure even then, consumed by his insatiable hunger for knowledge, particularly in the realms of the occult and the paranormal. The letter he had sent bore an aura of urgency and unease, its words hinting at discoveries that transcended the boundaries of rationality. With each passing nautical mile, the lighthouse's silhouette grew ever more imposing, a monolithic structure that seemed to stand apart from the very fabric of reality. The stormy heavens above cast fleeting shadows over its stark form, accentuating its enigmatic aura. The erratic pulse of its beacon light, like a heartbeat in the midst of an infinite void, both drew me closer and pushed me further away, an interplay of attraction and repulsion that mirrored the emotions churning within me. As the boat navigated the final stretch, the dock on the island's edge materialized before my eyes, a rough-hewn path leading towards the heart of this enigmatic realm. The sand underfoot was damp and cool, a tactile reminder of the island's isolation and the relentless tides that marked its borders. With a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, I disembarked, my gaze fixed upon the looming lighthouse that seemed to challenge the very fabric of reality. The figure of Dr. Holt emerged from the shadows, a wraith-like presence with eyes that held the weight of knowledge and experiences far beyond the grasp of mortal comprehension. His features were etched with lines of exhaustion and determination, a testament to the lengths he had gone to uncover the secrets that lay within the lighthouse's walls. His voice, when he spoke, carried an undercurrent of urgency and solemnity that resonated with the very essence of the island's mysteries. "Thank you for answering my call," he greeted me, his words hanging in the air like a solemn oath. "The time has come to unveil the haunting that has plagued this lighthouse for generations, to expose the malevolent entities that have taken root within its sanctum." I met his gaze with a mixture of curiosity and a growing sense of trepidation, realizing that this journey was not merely one of physical distance, but a plunge into the depths of the unknown. Dr. Holt's pursuit of knowledge had led him down a rabbit hole that defied reason and reality, and I was now poised on the precipice of a journey that promised to redefine my understanding of existence itself. As we began our ascent towards the towering lighthouse, I couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of an odyssey far more profound and harrowing than anything I could have ever imagined. Time seemed to stretch as Dr. Holt and I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the lighthouse, our footsteps echoing eerily against the cold, stone walls. The island's history was woven into every brick and beam, a tapestry of forgotten lives and unsettling events that whispered to us from the past. The tale of Blackstone Island's fishing community, now vanished without a trace, was like a haunting melody that hung in the air, its notes tinged with melancholy and a sense of unresolved sorrow. The journal entries we uncovered painted a vivid portrait of the Turner family, the keepers of the lighthouse in the 19th century. Their lives had been an enigma, shrouded in isolation and marked by tragedy. The ink on the pages seemed to carry the weight of their despair, their words conveying a sense of impending doom that clung to the very essence of the lighthouse. It was during a violent storm that the family met their grim fate, their existence extinguished like a candle snuffed out by the tempestuous winds. Dr. Holt's meticulous research had revealed whispers of shadowy figures glimpsed from afar, their forms dancing in the windows of the lighthouse like phantoms from another realm. The island's inhabitants had spoken of ghostly whispers that seemed to ride on the wind, carrying with them echoes of long-forgotten conversations and murmured secrets. The symbols etched into the walls were like a cryptic language, a code that held the key to the enigma that had plagued the lighthouse for generations. As I absorbed these revelations, a shiver traced its way down my spine, a cold realization settling over me like a heavy fog. The lighthouse was more than a physical structure, it was a vessel that carried the echoes of lives lost and stories untold. The weight of the past pressed upon us, the air growing heavier as we ventured deeper into the heart of the lighthouse, each step revealing layers of history that had remained hidden for centuries. One night, as the moon hung low in the sky, we found ourselves in a chamber that seemed frozen in time, its walls adorned with faded paintings and dusty artifacts. The air was charged with an electricity that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, as if the spirits of the past were attempting to communicate with us. It was there that we heard it, a blood-curdling scream that cut through the silence like a knife, sending a jolt of adrenaline coursing through our veins. We raced towards the source of the sound, our hearts pounding in our chests, our footsteps echoing through the corridors like a frantic drumbeat. The journal that lay open before us was filled with frenzied scribbles, its pages a canvas of desperation and terror. Dr. Holt's hand trembled as he pointed to the final entry, his voice quivering as he read aloud the chilling words that had been etched into the paper. "They are watching, waiting to breach the divide." The revelation hung in the air like a dark cloud, casting a pall over our already uneasy existence within the lighthouse's walls. The boundary between the living and the spectral had become blurred, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist around us. As I looked around the chamber, I couldn't help but feel that we were but players in a larger, more sinister narrative, a story that had been in motion long before we had arrived on the island. And so, with each discovery, the lighthouse's grip on our senses grew stronger, its secrets unraveling before us like a tapestry woven from the threads of the unknown. The shadows that danced upon the walls seemed to take on a life of their own, and the whispers that echoed through the corridors were a constant reminder of the enigma that surrounded us. As the days turned into weeks, we delved deeper into the mysteries of the lighthouse, our obsession with uncovering the truth driving us forward even as the darkness threatened to consume us whole. Days turned into weeks, and the lighthouse became a realm of unrelenting and increasingly bizarre occurrences that defied rational explanation. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been twisted and contorted within the lighthouse's confines, and the line between the natural and the supernatural had been irrevocably blurred. Objects took on a life of their own, moving in inexplicable ways that challenged the laws of physics and reason. A chair would suddenly shift across the room, or a book would fall from a shelf as if propelled by unseen hands. Footsteps, phantom echoes of an otherworldly presence, became a haunting symphony that played relentlessly throughout the night. They would start as faint whispers, barely audible above the rush of the wind, before growing into an almost cacophonous crescendo that seemed to reverberate through the very foundations of the lighthouse. I would lie in my bed, eyes wide open, heart pounding, as the sound of those spectral footsteps seemed to draw closer and closer, until they were but a whisper away. The flickering lights that illuminated the corridors cast a dance of shadows that seemed to have a life of their own, a spectral ballet that played out against the cold, stone walls. Faces would materialize within the darkness, their features twisted into grotesque masks that sent chills down my spine. I could almost hear their silent cries, their expressions frozen in a perpetual state of anguish and torment. Whispers, like faint echoes of long-forgotten conversations, would float on the air, carried by an unseen breeze that brushed against my skin like the caress of a phantom hand. The words were fragmented, snippets of dialogue that hinted at stories untold and secrets long buried. They were like fragments of a puzzle, pieces of a larger narrative that was just beyond my grasp, teasing me with their elusiveness. One night, as I sat alone in a dimly lit room, the temperature plummeted, and an icy chill enveloped me like a suffocating shroud. The air seemed to thicken with an otherworldly presence, and I could feel a pair of eyes boring into me from the shadows. I turned, my heart racing, to find a figure standing in the corner, its form indistinct and wavering. It seemed to flicker like a dying candle, its features a blur of darkness and light. Fear gripped me, and I could feel a sense of malevolence emanating from this spectral intruder. As I stared into those shadowy depths, a guttural whisper that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the abyss, filled the room. "You cannot escape what lies beyond," it hissed, the words reverberating in my mind like a nightmarish echo. The figure dissipated as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving me trembling in its wake, my thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and terror. With each passing day, the lighthouse's grip on our reality seemed to tighten, its presence a constant reminder of the malevolent forces that had taken root within its walls. Dr. Holt, once a beacon of rationality, had become consumed by an obsession that bordered on madness. He spoke of a gateway, a portal to another realm, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead were as ephemeral as mist. Our conversations had taken on an air of desperation as we pieced together the fragments of this disturbing puzzle. Dr. Holt's eyes held a haunted look, a reflection of the toll that the relentless hauntings had taken on his sanity. He would speak of visions, of glimpses into a realm beyond our understanding, and I could see the fear that gripped his heart, the knowledge that we were on the precipice of an abyss that threatened to consume us whole. In a moment of desperation, we made a fateful decision. We resolved to conduct a seance within the very heart of the lighthouse, to pierce the veil that separated the living from the spectral. The anticipation was palpable as we gathered around a weathered table, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. Our fingers lightly brushed the planchette, and the room seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the gravity of the moment. The planchette began to move, its motion deliberate and controlled, spelling out cryptic messages that seemed to emanate from some otherworldly intelligence. My heart raced as I watched the letters form words and sentences, each revelation pushing us further into the depths of the unknown. It was as if the very room had become a conduit for the spirits that dwelled within the lighthouse, a channel through which their voices could finally be heard. A gust of wind suddenly swept through the room, extinguishing the candles that had cast their dim glow upon the table. Darkness enveloped us, and a cold silence settled over the chamber. Panic gripped us as we fumbled for a source of light, our fingers trembling in the darkness. It was as if the very essence of the lighthouse had rebelled against our intrusion, its spectral inhabitants pushing back against our feeble attempts to commune with the beyond. In the midst of this suffocating darkness, a voice, a chilling resonance that seemed to emanate from all around us, echoed through the chamber. "You have trespassed into a realm beyond your comprehension," it intoned, its words a haunting symphony that sent shivers down my spine. "The divide cannot be breached, for there are forces that even you cannot fathom." When the candles were finally rekindled, the room was empty, save for Dr. Holt and me, our bodies drenched in a cold sweat, our minds reeling from the encounter. The seance had opened a door that we could never hope to close, and the reality of our situation became all too clear. The lighthouse, once a beacon of light, had become a nexus of darkness, a convergence of worlds that defied all reason and understanding. As I stumbled out of the chamber, the weight of our actions settled upon me like a leaden shroud. Dr. Holt's gaze met mine, and I could see the fear and resignation in his eyes. "They are trying to breach the divide," he whispered, his voice carrying a note of defeat that sent a chill down my spine. The divide between the living and the spectral had become perilously thin, and we were now ensnared in a web of malevolence that threatened to consume us whole. The days that followed our ill-fated seance were fraught with a sense of escalating dread, as if the very act of attempting to breach the divide had unleashed a torrent of malevolent energy that now seethed within the lighthouse's walls. Our once rational pursuit of understanding had descended into a maelstrom of paranoia and obsession, as the relentless haunting intensified, a tempest of supernatural phenomena that defied all logic and reason. Sleep became a distant luxury, a rare respite from the unending symphony of eerie whispers and phantom footsteps that echoed through the lighthouse's corridors. Each night, I would lie in my bed, staring up at the ceiling, my senses heightened and every nerve on edge. The darkness seemed to pulse with a sinister life of its own, and I would find myself listening for the faintest rustle of movement, the tiniest shift in the air that would signal the presence of the otherworldly entities that had taken root within the lighthouse. Dr. Holt, once a bastion of scientific skepticism, had transformed into a shell of his former self, his eyes haunted and his demeanor perpetually on edge. He would spend hours hunched over his desk, poring over ancient tomes and deciphering the cryptic symbols that adorned the lighthouse's walls. His obsession bordered on the fanatical, his pursuit of understanding having morphed into a dangerous obsession that threatened to consume him whole. One stormy night, as lightning streaked across the sky and thunder rumbled like a godly proclamation, I awoke to a sound that sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was a scream, a blood-curdling cry that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality. I sprang from my bed, my heart pounding, and raced through the corridors in search of its source. The sound led me to Dr. Holt's chamber, where I found him hunched over his desk, his face ashen and his eyes wide with terror. He pointed towards a journal that lay open before him, its pages filled with frenzied scribbles that seemed to dance across the paper like the ravings of a madman. The words were a cacophony of fear and desperation, describing malevolent entities that lurked just beyond the veil of our understanding, entities that hungered for our souls and sought to breach the very boundaries of our reality. The entries ended abruptly, as if the author had been overcome by a force beyond comprehension, leaving behind a chilling testament to the darkness that had taken root within the lighthouse. As I read those words, a chill settled over me, a bone-deep coldness that seemed to seep into my very soul. The realization struck me like a physical blow. We were not dealing with mere ghosts or hauntings, but with something far more insidious, something that defied all attempts at rational explanation. The lighthouse had become a nexus of malevolent energy, a focal point for forces that transcended the laws of nature and physics. With each passing day, the sense of impending doom grew more palpable, like a storm gathering on the horizon, its dark clouds a harbinger of a tempest that would consume us all. The lighthouse, once a symbol of illumination, had become a monument to the unknown, a beacon that drew us inexorably towards a fate that was far darker than anything we could have imagined. Dr. Holt's descent into madness became more pronounced, his once sharp mind now consumed by a relentless paranoia. He spoke of visions, of glimpses into realms that existed beyond the limits of human perception. He would stare into the distance, his eyes unseeing, as if he were communing with entities that dwelled on the other side. The symbols that adorned the lighthouse's walls held a sinister fascination for him, their meanings a puzzle that he was driven to solve, no matter the cost. One stormy evening, I awoke to find Dr. Holt standing at the very top of the lighthouse, his figure silhouetted against the tempestuous sea. His eyes were vacant, devoid of the spark of intellect that had once defined him. He stood there, arms outstretched, as if reaching towards the heavens themselves. His voice, when he spoke, was distant and hollow, his words a mix of incoherent mutterings and fragmented phrases. "They're trying to breach the divide," he whispered, his voice carrying an air of resignation that sent a shiver down my spine. The realization struck me like a thunderbolt. The entities that had haunted us, the malevolent forces that had tormented our every waking moment, were not content to remain on the other side. They were trying to cross over, to bridge the gap between the living and the spectral, and Dr. Holt had become their unwitting conduit. As I reached out to grab his arm, to pull him back from the precipice of insanity, his gaze met mine, and I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. For a brief moment, the man I had known, the brilliant and rational scholar, seemed to reassert himself. His grip tightened on the railing, and he took a step back, his features contorted in a mix of fear and determination. "They're using me," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the roar of the wind. And then, with a sudden and fluid movement, he stepped off the ledge, his figure disappearing into the darkness below. I rushed to the railing, my heart pounding in my chest, but there was no sign of Dr. Holt. The storm raged on, the waves crashing against the rocks with a primal fury, as if nature itself were mourning the loss of a brilliant mind consumed by the darkness that had plagued the lighthouse for centuries. I was left standing there, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, grief, confusion, and a sense of futility that was almost suffocating. Dr. Holt's sacrifice had been a chilling reminder that the malevolent forces that dwelled within the lighthouse were not bound by the laws of life and death. They were beyond our comprehension, beyond our ability to control or understand. As I descended the lighthouse's spiraling staircase, a heavy weight settled over me, a burden of knowledge that threatened to crush my spirit. The haunting had taken a life, claimed a soul, and I couldn't help but feel that I was merely a pawn in a game that spanned realms beyond human understanding. The lighthouse, once a beacon of light, had become a tomb for the living and a sanctuary for the spectral, a place where the boundaries between the two had become forever entwined. The passage of time became an enigma within the confines of the lighthouse, each day bleeding into the next as the haunting script tightened around my psyche. The once familiar corridors had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows, their walls seemingly pulsating with a malevolent energy that seemed to feed on my fear and uncertainty. Sleep became a fleeting luxury, a realm where nightmares merged with reality, where the whispers of the spectral merged with the echoes of my own tormented thoughts. The symbols etched into the walls, once an enigmatic puzzle to be solved, had taken on a sinister life of their own. They seemed to writhe and shift when I gazed upon them, as if they were alive, pulsating with an energy that was both ancient and primal. Dr. Holt's desperate attempts to decipher their meanings had yielded only fragments of understanding, hints of a language that had long been lost to the sands of time. One particularly harrowing night, as I wandered the lighthouse's dimly lit corridors, I felt a sudden and overwhelming compulsion to trace my fingers along the symbols. The moment my skin made contact with the cold stone, a jolt of energy surged through me, sending a shockwave of sensation coursing through my body. Visions flashed before my eyes, images of the Turner family, their faces contorted in anguish, and glimpses of shadowy figures that seemed to dance at the edge of my perception. A voice, a disembodied whisper that seemed to emerge from the very walls themselves, echoed in my mind. "Join us," it murmured, its words the seductive lure that tugged at the fringes of my sanity. The boundary between the living and the spectral had become blurred, and I could feel the very fabric of my existence unraveling, as if I were being drawn into a reality that defied all reason and understanding. In my desperation, I turned to the journal that Dr. Holt had left behind, its pages a testament to the horrors that had consumed him. The entries were a chronicle of his descent into madness, his mind consumed by the relentless hauntings and the malevolent entities that sought to breach the divide. His words painted a chilling portrait of a man teetering on the brink of oblivion, a mind fractured by the weight of knowledge that was too vast, too terrifying to bear. I could feel the darkness closing in around me, its tendrils reaching into the very depths of my being. The lighthouse had become a prison, its walls the cage that held me captive, its malevolent inhabitants a relentless torment that seemed to feed on my fear and despair. It was as if the spectral forces that had claimed Dr. Holt's sanity were now turning their attention towards me, their hunger insatiable, their motives unfathomable. In a moment of desperation, I resolved to confront the entities that dwelled within the lighthouse, to pierce the veil that separated the living from the spectral. Armed with the knowledge gleaned from Dr. Holt's research, I retraced his steps, following the path that had led him to the lighthouse's pinnacle on that fateful night. The wind howled around me, carrying with it a symphony of whispers and faint echoes that seemed to call out to me, to beckon me towards the unknown. As I stood at the top of the lighthouse, the storm raging around me, I could feel a presence, a force that seemed to envelope me in its icy grasp. The symbols that adorned the walls glowed with an otherworldly light, their energy pulsating in time with my heartbeat. I raised my arms towards the heavens, my voice a desperate plea that was carried away by the wind. "Show yourself," I cried, my words a defiant challenge to the entities that had tormented me for so long. And then, as if in response to my summons, a figure materialized before me, its form a twisted fusion of darkness and light. Its eyes, pools of infinite depth, seemed to bore into my very soul, its presence a chilling reminder of the power that dwelled within the lighthouse. It spoke, its voice a chorus of whispers that seemed to echo from the void itself. "We are the forgotten, the lost souls that have lingered between worlds, it intoned, its words a lament that sent a shiver down my spine. You have glimpsed the abyss, and now you must make a choice, to join us in our eternal torment, or to find a way to seal the divide that threatens to consume us all. The choice hung in the air, a weight that pressed down upon me, its gravity almost suffocating. I could feel the allure of oblivion, the temptation to surrender to the darkness that had ensnared Dr. Holt. But as I stared into the abyss, a spark of determination ignited within me, a resolve to fight back against the forces that sought to drag me into their realm of eternal suffering. With a final, desperate surge of willpower, I raised my hands and began to trace a series of symbols in the air, a ritualistic dance that mirrored the etchings on the lighthouse's walls. The air seemed to crackle with energy, and I could feel a barrier forming, a wall that separated the spectral from the living. The figure before me let out a howl of anguish, its form flickering and distorting as if it were being torn apart by unseen forces. And then, with a blinding burst of light, the figure dissipated, its presence vanquished by the sheer force of my determination. The storm began to recede, the wind dying down to a gentle whisper, and the lighthouse seemed to exhale, as if it were releasing a breath it had been holding for centuries. As I stood there, alone on the lighthouse's pinnacle, I could feel a sense of peace wash over me, a calm that had long eluded me. The divide had been sealed, the malevolent entities banished to the realms from which they had emerged. The lighthouse, once a place of torment, had been reclaimed, its true purpose as a beacon of light and hope restored. But as I descended the spiraling staircase, a sense of unease lingered, a reminder that the boundary between the living and the spectral was a fragile one, a line that could be crossed all too easily. The haunting of Blackstone Island's lighthouse was a reminder that there are forces beyond our comprehension, realms that exist beyond the limits of human understanding. And as I stepped out onto the island's shores, the memories of my ordeal still fresh in my mind, I couldn't help but wonder what other mysteries lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be unearthed by those brave or foolish enough to seek them out. In the wake of the harrowing events that had unfolded within the haunted confines of the lighthouse, Blackstone Island seemed to heave a sigh of relief. The storm that had raged around the lighthouse had abated, leaving behind an eerie calm that hung in the air like a fragile equilibrium. The island's inhabitants, oblivious to the supernatural forces that had gripped their shores, continued their lives with a sense of normalcy, unaware of the darkness that had briefly consumed their realm. For me, the memories of that fateful ordeal remained etched in my mind, a haunting tapestry of fear and revelation that would forever shape my understanding of the world. Dr. Holt's sacrifice, his descent into madness, and the spectral forces that had sought to breach the divide had become a part of my very being, a story that I carried with me like a weight on my shoulders. The lighthouse itself stood as a sentinel, its form a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the unknown. It had weathered the storm, both metaphorically and literally, its beacon once again casting its reassuring light over the island's shores. But as I gazed up at its towering silhouette, I couldn't help but wonder if the malevolent entities that had haunted its corridors were truly gone, or if they lingered in the shadows, biding their time until another unsuspecting soul stumbled upon their realm. In the years that followed, I became consumed by a relentless pursuit of knowledge, driven by a need to understand the forces that had torn apart the fabric of reality within the lighthouse's walls. I delved into ancient texts and obscure manuscripts, seeking answers to the questions that had haunted my dreams. The symbols that had adorned the lighthouse's chambers became a focal point of my research, their meanings a puzzle that I was determined to decipher, no matter the cost. Yet, even as I unearthed fragments of understanding, I couldn't escape the feeling that some truths were meant to remain hidden, that there were realms of knowledge that were beyond the grasp of mortal minds. The spectral entities and the haunting that had plagued the lighthouse were a reminder that the boundaries of our understanding were like fragile glass, easily shattered by the vastness of the cosmos and the mysteries that it held. As I stood on the shores of Blackstone Island, the memories of my ordeal still fresh in my mind, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and trepidation. The lighthouse, once a place of terror, had become a beacon of curiosity, a symbol of the indomitable human spirit that seeks to pierce the veil of the unknown. The haunting had left an indelible mark on me, a reminder that there are forces beyond our comprehension, realms that exist just beyond the edges of our perception. And so, I continue my quest for understanding, my journey into the enigma that had gripped the lighthouse's walls, a testament to the unyielding curiosity of the human mind. As I gaze out into the expanse of the sea, I can't help but wonder what other mysteries lie hidden beneath the surface, what other stories of the unknown wait to be uncovered by those brave enough to venture into the abyss. For in the end, it is the pursuit of these mysteries, the quest to unravel the secrets of the universe, that defines us as a species. The haunting of Blackstone Island's lighthouse was a reminder that there are depths to our existence that we have yet to fathom, and that the journey into the unknown is both a source of fear and wonder. As I take my first step forward, embracing the uncertainty that lies ahead, I carry with me the echoes of that haunted realm, a reminder that the line between reality and the supernatural is a thin one, and that the mysteries of the universe are as vast and unending as the sea itself.